is Editor's Take. I'm Sakshi Batra and with me is Gaurav Choudhary. He's the Deputy Executive Editor of Moneycontrol, and we are going to be talking about the retail inflation which has accelerated to a 6-month high. Thanks a lot, Gaurav, for joining in. In your analysis, what is interesting to note is not just the headline number and the food price index which has shown a rise, but the lifestyle expenses as well. I'll come to that, but first of all, the headline number of 2.92% for April CPI inflation versus a 2.86% which was in March. So how do you analyze this number?
It's it's still very comfortably within the RBI's 4% tolerable level, and so far as interest rate decisions are concerned, this is something that is going to not make the RBI sit up and take notice.
Okay.
This is something that they'll be very comfortable with. Likewise, food inflation remains comfortably much below 2%. It was 1.1% in April.
Yeah.
It has moved out of disinflation. The worrying bit, however, not the worrying bit, but the noticeable thing about food inflation will be that whether it will keep on rising now. So we have had a period where food inflation was actually in negative territory for a long period of time, persistently, and that was because of a situation of glut and abundant supplies that had brought down prices at the mandis, and likewise for at the retail end also. Now, but if food prices start rising and if monsoon does not behave normally, that is, the monsoon rains are not normal this year or below normal, that is going to be interesting to see, because then the new government will have a challenge to contain food inflation if food inflation keeps on rising and then monsoon rains are below normal. But that is still a couple of months away. As of now, the headline inflation remains very, very comfortable.
All right, so the headline inflation is comfortable, but I'll just come to your analysis now, wherein you say that the retail inflation has remained comfortably below the 4% mark in the last 13 months or from April 2018. However, our lifestyle expenses are still very high. Why do you say that?
Yeah, so there is a puzzling bit of data here. One is that while the headline inflation is very comfortable, and that is noticeable at shop end prices also, it's not galloping of many goods. The getting by is not getting easier, and the reason for that is that many the cost of living and expenses that we spend in our day-to-day lives, which is often referred to as lifestyle inflation, seems to be rising at a far faster clip than the headline inflation. And part of it that has also got to do with the weightage in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index basket. The consumer price in the Consumer Price Index basket, food has a very high weightage. It's about 40%. So that kind of pulls down the headline inflation, because if food inflation is in negative territory, if there is disinflation, then obviously the headline inflation will be pulled down because of the high weight. But having said that, if you take, for instance, healthcare costs, and if you say that if you consider that every time you visit a doctor or every time you go to a hospital, your costs are rising, and that is showing up in the government's numbers as well. Average retail inflation in health has been, in the last 13 months from April 2018 to April 2019, has been 7.24%. In fact, in April 19, the latest data which is available, it was 8.43%, and it has remained above 8%. In fact, it was pushed close to 9% since December 2018. So that is, the headline inflation is masking that bit. Likewise, likewise for education services as well. And I mean, it is obviously is a proxy to measure to what extent prices of, or what extent school fees and college fees and education fees are rising, and that has remained close to about 7% on an average in the last 13 months. It was the average is 6.62%. In April, that last month, it was 6.93%, and the month before that, it was 7.51, and 3 months before that, it was hovering above 8%. So that is something that tells you that certain services, and these are essential services, the costs are rising, which is probably not getting reflected in the headline cost. But if you look at not just these, not just health and education, if you look at, say, the price of cosmetics or personal care products, or products like, say, deodorants, etc., that the personal care products is also ruling above the average, on an average, above the headline inflation rates. In the last 13 months, it was 4.62%. It grew 4.62%. It started coming down a bit. It's come down to below 4% in April, but until March, it was above 4%, and at a time when the headline inflation rate was far below 3%.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're going out for a movie, a recreation and amusement, or you're going out to any amusement related activity, the average inflation for that, the average cost of that, according to the government's own data, has risen by about 5.33% in the last 13 months. And in the last month itself, in April 2019, it grew at 5.5%. So it has remained consistently above 5% for the last several months. But there's also an interesting bit. Interesting bit is in housing inflation. This is essentially the cost of rental costs, and the rental costs, house rental costs, in the last 13 months have grown at an average of 6.62%. And again, this is not getting reflected in the headline inflation because of a lower weightage compared to, say, food. In fact, in the month of April, it grew at 4.76%. The point here is that consistently, many of the prices of many of these goods and services actually are rising at a clip far faster than what the headline inflation.
Services are actually, the inflation over here is much above the 4% comfortable level of the RBI as well. So is it time that these facets also be taken, seriously, their weightage be taken seriously into account whenever we are calculating their inflation?
The government has been working, and not just this government, the work had started in the previous government. India doesn't have a services inflation index. The only services that are included are these essential services like health and education, which are part of the consumer price index basket. But it's about time we have a full-fledged services inflation index as well, prices index as well. And the government has been working for it. Say, for instance, to what extent are the prices of banking related or financial services going up? And these are part of our day-to-day lifestyle, day-to-day household expenses. But these are not reflected in any of. So the government has been working on it, and they have been testing various kinds of data from various sources. And it's about time, because services constitute about 2/3 of the Indian economy. We cannot have a situation where we are taking policy-related decisions, especially in the interest rate-related decisions, without actually accounting for the prices and the cost of services. And I think sooner rather than later, we should come out with the services price index, which will take into account a far wider basket of goods, a far wider basket of services and cost heads that are otherwise spent by households on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So it is absolutely critical, and getting critical by the day, to include services inflation as well when we monitor the entire headline inflation. Coming to food inflation again. Now, as per your analysis, again, in the last 13 months, you say the average retail food inflation is growing at a 0.24%, which is much lower than the retail inflation which we saw for April, which is at 1.3%. So is it still comfortable, and do we not know the true picture?
So far as the price data for food is concerned, it is quite, that is well established. We know the reasons why prices of food were actually falling, and that is that it is essentially showing up also in the mandis. And so if you compare wholesale prices at mandis, the farmers have been complaining that they are not getting the right price for the produce, and that lies at the core of the current agrarian or rural distress, and which is sweeping across many states, and have also become a big electoral rallying point in the middle of the elections. So, and that is the peculiarity of the Indian agriculture economy, that prices have come down, so consumers have benefit. But when prices come down, and prices are the only source of income for farmers, their incomes have also come down. So how do you deal with that? And one way of doing that, and which various policymakers have been talking about, is to try and bring farmers closer to markets, because there is a level of intermediation. Even if wholesale prices are low, the difference between wholesale and retail prices are very high. Say, for instance, if potato is selling at 3 rupees a kilo in wholesale markets, it probably would be selling at 15 rupees a kilo in retail markets. So who is pocketing the remaining 12 rupees? It's certainly not the farmer. So if you bring the farmers closer to markets, the prices will remain within manageable limits, and farmers' income will also go up.
Absolutely. So that is very critical. And let's put this all together. Going forward in the June policy, when you see retail inflation at 2.92%, the WPI inflation, which has come out again at 3.07%, how do you see policy rates really moving from here?
So I don't think the RBI or the Monetary Policy Committee is going to, my own belief is that the RBI and the Monetary Policy Committee is going to vote for a status quo. So they're not going to change the interest rates. the only way interest rates can move with its low inflation is to reduce rates. But I don't think RBI is going to reduce rates in the June policy, primarily because we'll be awaiting a full budget in the month of first week of July, and the central bank would like to know the government's budget plans as well as the borrowing plans and the fiscal consolidation plan. So it would not like to preempt a interest rate decision ahead of a full budget, and that has been the practice that we have been noticing over the last several years. So if at all there is an interest rate related decision, I expect the MPC to vote for it only in the August policy.
All right. Thanks a lot then, Gaurav, for sharing all that insight. Well, these are the details that we have for you on CPI, retail inflation, the lifestyle expenses that we have been having, and that is going exponentially high. And we need to consider whether we should be having a complete services index as well, which is a part of, or a bigger part, reflecting truly what the complete retail inflation is. Thanks a lot for joining us in this edition of Editor's Take, and do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.